Hello. Welcome back to my basement, home of every ARC I've ever owned. Today I have a lot of books to show you. Like, I'm looking at this stack, there's two, and I feel like I'm more excited to talk about these books because there's so many and they're so good. Two kinds of books in this video, maybe three. Books that I have recently read. This is kind of my third reading update of quarantine, and also a book haul of some books that I am over the moon excited about. I recently had a birthday, feeling 22. Most of these books have nothing to do with my birthday, but I've certainly been treating myself to some book buying as of late. And the third category that fits into those are the anti-racist nonfiction that I'm going to talk about first because I need everyone to have these books on their radar. I did some anti-racist reading back in 2016 around the election. I remember learning so much during that time and it stuck with me, but I will also say that in the years that followed, I sort of lulled slowly into this complacency where I still cared, but I wasn't speaking up as much. And that has been like truer than ever in the past year. Lives are at stake and it's our job to educate ourselves. Books are one of the ways that I'm choosing to do that. I've also been making donations. I will leave links in the description and I encourage you to do the same. So with that being said, I have some great books to recommend you. Like, they are life changer books. Have I ever steered you wrong with a book I called life-changing? I don't want to know if I have. But have I? No. I'm Still Here by Austen Channing Brown. Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness. Austen Channing Brown is a writer, a speaker, an activist. This book is tiny. It's like 150 pages, and it's also like, it's short. The pages are pretty easy to get through. I recently drove to Michigan, and the audiobook is like 4 hours and some change. So I obviously listened at double speed. I listened to the entire book like in one sitting on this road trip, and I was crying, I was shaking, I was hitting the steering wheel. There are beautiful moments of joy in this book. There is so much to learn in her writing. I really appreciate it because it is that mix of like, it's all her personal stories and all of these societal truths. She talks about white guilt, white shame, kind of breaks these things down, but really illustrates them. She's had a career, studying these things, but then also working in religious organizations and nonprofits. And so her perspective comes from that world. But also, if you just read the first chapter, I promise you're going to be hooked. I'm sure I'm not the first person telling you about this book, but let me be the last before you actually read it. It literally went out of stock because everyone was buying it, and it's now back in stock. So grab it while you can. And then also, if you're like me, maybe you'll want to listen to her speak more about it. And Brene Brown recently had her on her podcast, Unlocking Us, and they have a stellar interview also. And then on her show, which you can find on Vimeo, it's Googleable, she also had Brene Brown as a guest. So Brene Brown plus Austen Channing Brown, just like dream 7 hours of content right there. Next, I picked up Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. I also have this in audio format. If you're not on Audible yet, there's a link for that as well in the description, because Trevor Noah reads this book and I'm just getting into it. I'm gonna read a couple others first, but I saw this was in paperback and I was like, why didn't I ever read this? I love memoirs from comedians, and so now I'm like 1000% diving in. Trevor Noah is in like top 3 television personalities for me. How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. Ibram was on Trevor Noah with Jason Reynolds. I've been feeling really inspired to read this one. He is the founding director of the Anti-Racist Research and Policy Center at American University. This book is a huge conversation lately, and if you've read it, I'd love to hear what you thought of it. I'm excited to dive in. Tell me what books you have been reading on your lifelong anti-racism journey, but especially in the last few months. If you haven't been reading, please get on that and please educate yourself. Now I'm gonna pick up where I left off with the books that I've been reading in quarantine. So this is taking us back to like early May probably. So last time I made a video about all this stuff, I had just read One of Us is Lying, and so I decided to pick up One of Us is Next by Karen M. McManus, the sequel to One of Us is Lying. Something in my soul was like, you need to read this sequel. Even though One of Us is Lying wasn't my favorite, I still enjoyed it. I appreciated it for everything it was. It was doing all the right things. As a YA book, it just like wasn't my cup of tea. This was even less my cup of tea, but still, like, there's something about it where I'm like, I needed to read that. I needed this reading experience. I so hope that this becomes a Netflix series or something. This story belongs on the screen with these characters, this action adventure. I said it before, I'll say it again. This is the kind of YA book that I would have appreciated from like 8th grade to sophomore year in high school. The book I read after that was The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. I made a whole long video about it. Thank you so much for all the discussion that's been happening in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts. I still love discussing this book, so if you haven't watched this video, I will link it up here and it'll also be in the description. After that, I listened to another audiobook, and that is Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. I talked about Brene Brown earlier in this video, so I'm a little obsessed with leadership. Like, I love the idea of workplace politics and just communication. I don't know if you've ever watched The Bold Type on Freeform. That show is my shit because I love watching leadership in action. I love watching coworker. Like, there's something about that whole process and the dynamics of it where it can get so messy, so high schooly, so quickly. Brene Brown is also one of my favorite thought leaders, social scientists. I also love how she has stepped up in the conversation of anti-racism. So this was my first actual Brene Brown reading experience. I feel like when you read one of her books, you get the idea of the other ones. She references her old stuff in this quite a bit, which was interesting. As someone who hasn't read the other books, I didn't mind that, but I feel like I'd be a little annoyed if I had read all of them and it was all just regurgitated like for the workplace in this one. I digress. I loved it so much. Okay, this is one that I'm also really excited to talk about. It is Writers and Lovers by Lily King. I have so many feelings about this book. Oh my god. This book reminded me of what it felt like to read My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh. I highlighted so many things on my Kindle reading it. It follows 31-year-old Casey. She's a writer. She's been working on her novel for 6 years. She works as a waitress. She falls in love with these two men. She has a best friend. Her mother just recently died. But that is the story. Like, the story is her going through her life. And not a ton happens for like the first half of this book. And there's no huge like hero's journey plot, which I love. I love when an author is not afraid to take like a sort of autobiographical journey and just like have beautiful prose and like serve it to us. That's what this book is. If this tells you anything, I gave it 5 stars immediately after I finished it because I was just on that much of a high from it. And then the next day I was like, no, this is a 4-star book for me. But 4 stars is still really good. Does that help? The next book that I read after that was I'm Still Here by Austen Channing Brown. Already discussed. The book I read after that was The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. It's written in verse. It follows this Black queer kid through middle school, high school, into college, discovering drag, discovering his identity, falling in love. I gushed about it in my most recent video, which was Black queer book recommendations, and so I don't want to like re-dive into it here. Here's another reminder that you should read this book. On to, okay, so these are books I've been purchasing. The books I've been purchasing have been the books I've been reading. Like, all of those are also new purchases for me. So that's weird. Usually it takes me years to read the books I buy. My immediate TBR is kind of still in LA on my bookshelf. I'm stuck with my childhood books, the books I left behind here, and the books that I go out and buy. Today, the day I'm filming this video, Ottessa Moshfegh's newest book, Death in Her Hands, came out today. I mentioned earlier in this video My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which was a top 3 read for me last year. That book was just like perfectly timed in my life. And that's a book that I'm proud of the video I made. I'll link it up here because I know that I made a lot of people read that book. And I'm also grateful for my friends, Maria and Jenna, who made me read that book. So this is her newest book. This one sounds really funky. I think there's an element of isolation in this one. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. I wish, because I have 2 other books by Ottessa Moshfegh at my apartment in LA that I'm so in the mood to read right now. She's really well known for this book called Eileen. I haven't read that yet, so I kind of want to read that one before I dive into this one, but who knows. This is also like only 250 pages and looks like it's a pretty quick read. Next up, I ordered online All About Love by Bell Hooks. So Bell Hooks is a writer that I studied in college, but I've never read a full book by her. I need some of this kind of writing in my life right now. So this is a book that I probably won't like sit and read the entire thing, but I'll like come back section by section. Sexuality, love, like these are topics I obsess over. So next up, I want to highlight You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. My friend Maya Marlette at Scholastic edited this book. I gushed about it even more in my previous video, so once again, please go check that out to hear more. Next up, I was excited to finally get my hands on Cleanness by Garth Greenwell. Earlier this year, I read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. For some reason, I see this book and that one as like parallels. I don't know if that's just me. I probably saw some publishing lists that like listed them as similar, but like the length, the covers, the way they sound, the way they're pitched, very similar. I'm in for some heartbreak and some beautiful writing with this one. Very much looking forward to diving in. Next, I picked up If We Were Us by K.L. Walther. I have this arc sitting in my apartment in LA, and so when the hardcover came out, I'm so excited to read this one. It's like a love saga dealing with sexuality and just like sounds like a really fun, cute, romantic YA book. So my parents know that I am really into the Enneagram, and they have sort of gotten into it too. And so I recently had a birthday, and they surprised me by giving me The Enneagram of Belonging by Christopher L. Hurwitz. And along with it is the workbook that comes with it. Is smart because it doesn't just break it down into 9 sections with the Enneagrams. Like you have to hunt for the T of your own Enneagram. So I'm looking forward to the workbook. He was also on Brene Brown's podcast. So yay. Those are all of the books I want to show you. If you've read any of them or are excited about any of them, please let me know. I would love to discuss. Have a good one. I'll talk to you guys very soon. Thanks so much for watching this video. Are you still watching? My name is Tiernan. Goodbye.